Hi folks, welcome to day 16. So today is our review day. Alright, today's our review day because tomorrow is your test. So remember, on your test you're going to need to know a few things. You're going to need to know your characteristics of polynomials. Alright? Characteristics of polynomials, remember, are things like leading coefficient, which remember is just the number in front of the highest power of x. Degree, which is just your highest power of x. And standard form. Alright, remember standard form just means you have your highest power of x first, and then everything else is in descending order. Alright? So that's like taking something that looks like y equals x plus 4 minus 5x squared plus 6x cubed. You're going to start by rewriting that in standard form. So we're going to put the biggest power of x first. My biggest power of x is my x cubed. So I start by putting that first. So 6x cubed, because that's the full term. Then I do everything else in descending order. So after an x cubed, I'm going to look for an x squared. Then just an x. And finally my x to the fourth. Or sorry, not x to the fourth. My just plain number, which is 4. Sorry for that confusion. Alright, so standard form just means, hey, rewrite it with the biggest power of x first. You're not doing anything else other than rewriting it. Your degree says, hey, what is the biggest power of x? And see, the biggest power of x is 3, so the degree is 3. And then that leading coefficient is just the number that's in front of the biggest power of x. In this case, the number in front of the biggest power of x is just 6. The last part about characteristics that you'll need to know is what the different terms mean. A monomial. Mono means one, so monomial means one term. Alright? So, one term could be x. It could be an x squared. It could be a 5x squared. It could be a 6x cubed y to the fourth. It could be 0. It could be a number, alright? It's just a singular term. If it's just one term, like y equals x, or y equals x squared, or y equals 5x squared, or y equals 6x cubed y to the fourth, alright? All of those are only one term, right? The equals part is only one term, right? So since there's only one term, it's a monomial. Binomials mean that there's two terms. Your most common binomial is x plus a number, like x plus 6, right? That's a binomial because it has one term added to a second term, and they can't simplify, so we call it a binomial, all right? 4x cubed plus 3x squared is also a binomial because it has two terms. Anything with just two terms is a binomial. And similarly, trinomial, right? So part of how I keep these separate, binomial reminds me of bicycle, trinomial reminds me of tricycle. A bicycle has 2 wheels, a tricycle has 3 wheels. A binomial has 2 terms, a trinomial has 3 terms. Alright? So a trinomial would be like x squared plus x plus 6. Alright, it has to have 3 separate terms that are being added or subtracted to one another. Alright? Multiplying and dividing doesn't count. Right here, we have multiplication going on in here, but that's all one term because it's all being multiplied together to be one term. Alright? A term is separated by addition or subtraction from one another. Alright? So that's how we get trinomials. Anything bigger than that, so if you have if we had x cubed plus x squared plus x plus 6, all right, that's 4 terms. 4 terms isn't 3, so it's not a trinomial if it has four or more terms. All right, we just call them a general polynomial at that point because getting into the exact phrasings of them doesn't make a whole lot of sense, all right? So trinomial is 3 terms. Keep in mind, it doesn't have to just be an x squared term, though. You could have, like, x cubed plus 5x plus 7, right? And that's 3 different terms. One thing being added to another thing, being added to another thing, all right? So that's all on characteristics of polynomials, all right? Then you have adding and subtracting polynomials. Remember, that just means you combine like terms. And I'll go through the problems on those in a minute. All right? Multiplication of polynomials comes in 2 forms. Either you multiply a monomial, and remember, multiplying a monomial looks like 5x times like x squared plus 6x plus 2, right? That's what multiplying a monomial looks like. It's one term out in front of a polynomial. When you're multiplying a monomial, remember, coefficients multiply. So the numbers multiply. But if your exponents add. So 5x times x squared is 5 times 1, because that's our coefficients. And then our exponents add. So then we have 5x, right? That's an x to the 1. It's an implied 1 there. So we have 1 plus 2. So 5x times x squared gets us 5x squared. Because 5 times 1 is 5. X times x squared is x cubed. All right? So that's one of the things you're going to have to do for multiplying. The other one you're going to have to do is FOILing. Remember, first, outer, inner, last. All right? And last but not least, we're going to have to factor. But we're only going to have to factor x squared plus bx plus c. We're not going to have to factor with an a, so there's not going to be anything like that. And we're not going to have to factor by grouping. So we're only going to do simple factoring. That's why there was only simple factoring on the review assignment. All right? So let's go ahead and walk through the solutions to the review real quick. All right. Numbers 1 through 3, all you were doing was combining like terms. So anytime that you have a plus sign here, a lot of you on your homework have been trying, or on like the quizzes, when you see a plus sign in between, for whatever reason, you're trying to multiply. If it's asking you to find the sum, or if there's a plus sign between them, you only have to add. You're only adding in the first section. Your first section on your quiz or on your test tomorrow will also be adding, which means you're going to combine like terms, all right? So you're going to simplify the problem by combining like terms. So in our problem that we did for number 1, we're going to combine like terms. So we have y plus 5 plus 3y plus 9. So combining like terms just means you drop all of the parentheses and you just add them. So we're going to add y and 3y to get 4y. You can't add y and 5 because y is a variable. You don't know what it is. So y might be 1, and so then that sum would be 6, but y might be negative 5, so that sum would be 0, right? That's why we can't add them. Since we can't add them, you leave them as 4y. There are still people that are just like putting in random numbers for your variables. Never put in a number for a variable unless I explicitly tell you to. There's no reason to put in, like, some people are putting in 1, some people are putting in 0, some people are putting in, like, random numbers. Like, they'll be like, oh, here's 7.1, so I'm going to plug that in. No, that doesn't make any sense, all right? Only do what the problem tells you to. This problem just tells you to combine like terms. So you're going to combine you're going to combine your y's, and then you combine your numbers, all right? So when we combine our numbers, we have positive 5 and negative 9, so that's how we get our minus 4. Down at number 2, similar concept. You're going to combine your squareds. All right, so you have g squared, so you're going to be combining those two numbers that are in front. All right, so negative g squared plus 3g squared gets us 2. All right, and that's because we have negative g squared plus 3g squared. Remember, there's like a 1 here, so we have negative 1 plus 3 gets us 2, because that's 3 minus 1. All right, so that's where that's coming from. Similarly with our g's, we have negative 4g, and then we have 9g. So that's how we get our 5. And then we have our negative 2. There's nothing to combine with that, so that just stays as negative 2. And with number 3, again, just combining like terms, we have 3p squared and negative 6p squared. So that's how we get our negative 3. Then we have 3p and 5p. That's how we get our 8. And then negative 2 and negative 5 to get negative 7. All right, so that's 1 through 3. 4 through 6 is finding the difference. Remember, finding the difference just means subtracting. When you're subtracting, you have to do the extra step of distributing in this negative sign into your second set of parentheses. All right, so that was my first step. Everything that was originally there came down. All right, so my negative 3d squared plus d minus 3, that all came down. And then I distributed in my negative sign into the second half. All right, so that's how I get a plus 5 and a minus 3. And then you combine like terms to get the minus 3d squared. Then we had d minus 3d to get minus 2d. And then we have minus 3 and plus 5 to get plus 2. All right? Down at number 5, again, your first step in every single problem that asks you to find the difference, or every single problem that's asking you to subtract polynomials, your first step is always to distribute in that negative sign. So if I see people on the test tomorrow that aren't distributing in their negative signs still, I can tell that those people didn't watch this video. All right? So you're going to distribute in your negative sign on your right half, your right set of parentheses. So again, everything on the left just comes down like normal, and then you're going to distribute in that negative sign to get a negative 5x squared, a positive x, and then a negative 7. And then you just combine your like terms. So then 2x squared minus 5x squared gets you negative 3x squared. 6x plus x gets you 7x. Negative 11 minus 7 gets you negative 18. Again, with 6, you're just going to start by distributing in that negative sign. So that's how you get negative 4k squared plus 2k minus 6. And then when you go through and try them out, you'll get, so we have 2k squared minus 4k squared, so that's how we get negative 2k squared. Then we just have 2k, there's nothing else to combine it with, so it just comes along. And then we have negative 6 plus 4 gets us negative 2. All right? 7 and 8, you're trying to find the product of a monomial. That means when you distribute in, you're multiplying the numbers and adding the exponents. So 7 times 1 gets us 7. Then we have x times x squared. That means we have to add the exponents. So x to the 1 times x to the 2 is x to the 1 plus 2, which is x cubed. All right, so 7 times 1 got us 7. X times x squared got us x cubed. All right, now we go ahead and distribute in our 7x to that negative 8. So we have 7 times negative 8. That's how we get negative 56, because 7 times negative 8 is negative 56. And then we have our x times an x to the 0 or nothing or a 1. And that's how we get just the x that comes along. All right, so coefficients multiply, exponents add. Same thing down here. Let's see. So our coefficient is -5. And our exponent, we have an a to the 1. All right, so when we are distributing in our -5a times a squared, we have -5 times 1, which gets us our -5. And then we have a times a squared gets us a cubed. -5 times -3 gets us +15. A times a gets us a squared. -5 times -10 gets us +50. And then the a comes along for the ride because there's nothing to multiply it with. All right? So that's how you would do 7 and 8. All right. Now comes to 9 and 10, which is all on foiling. All right? Foiling, remember, just stands for firsts, outers, inners, and lasts. So when we're going through and we're foiling, we start with our first two. So we have m times m, which is how we get m squared. Then we have m times 3m, so we get 3m. Or sorry, we have m times 3, which gets us 3m. Then we have -4, so it was our firsts, our outers, our inners, which is -4 times m, gets us -4m. And our lasts are -4 times 3 gets us -12. All right, so we have first, outer, inner, last. Then we combine like terms, so m squared. And then we have plus 3m minus 4m to get us minus m, and then -12. All right, so all you have to remember is to FOIL, first, outer, inner, last. Same thing with number 10. So we have our firsts, m times 9m, gets us 9m squared. All right. Our outers, we have m times -1 gets us -1m. Our inners are -7 times 9m, so that's how we get -63m. And our lasts are -7 times -1, so we get +7. Combining our like terms, we have our 9m squared from our f, and our 7 from our L, and then the OI is usually where you're combining your like terms. So we have -1m minus 63m gets us -64m. All right, so that's the OI part, the outers and inners. And last but not least, we have factoring the polynomial completely. All right. These are the types of polynomials that you're going to get on your test tomorrow. All right, so your first step in all of these types of polynomials, you can see that the a value is 1. So all you have to do is you factor c. You list out the factors of c, and then you add them together. Remember, if c is positive, all right, but b is negative, so if c is positive, but b is negative, then that means both of your factors of c, all right, are going to be negative. Both factors of c are negative. All right, if c is positive and b is positive, then both factors of c are positive. And if b is positive or negative, but c is negative, then that means one of them is positive and one is negative. All right. So just because I know that my students are getting tripped up when it comes to factoring, so I wanted to make sure that it was really clear what your factors, what the signs are going to be. All right, so let's go ahead and go through these problems. So With number 11, we're starting off by listing out our factors of C. All right, my factors of 4 are 1 and 4 and 2 and 2. All right, so that means in order to factor this, we list out our factors of 4, then we add them up to get our B value. All right, so you can see my first one added up to be 5, which is great. My second one didn't add up to be 5. All right, I was looking for 5, and since my second one didn't add up to be 5, we just ignore it. All right, so that one we just go ahead and ignore. So then what we do is we take our factors, all right, and since that's what since our 5 is what we were looking for, we take our factors of C and put them in. We include their signs, which is why I made a note about the signs. All right, and you always put them in as x plus the factor, and then x plus the factor. All right, now if you only have them as both positive if B and C are positive. All right. All right. So since we had 4 and 1, that added up to be 5. That's why we have x plus 1 and x plus 4. All right, number 12, very similar in terms of what we have to do. You always start these problems out by listing out your factors of C. All right, that's the work that I want to see you doing on your test. The reason why I want to see that work on your paper is because then if you mess up, I can give you partial credit. If you just give me the right answer, I can give you most credit, but I want to see this work. All right, that work tells me this work here tells me that you actually know how to do this, that you're not just writing down some answer from the internet. All right, so here we have a negative B, but we have a positive C. All right, so there's 2 ways to get positive numbers. One of them is if both factors are positive, which is what we just had. The other way is if both factors are negative. So if B is negative, I know that both of my factors of C have to be negative, since my C is positive. I know that both of the factors have to be negative because they have to add up to be a negative number, but multiply to be a positive number. 2 negative numbers add up to be another negative number, but they multiply to be a positive number. That's how I know that my factors have to both be negative. So I listed out my factors of 21, which are 1 and 21, and 3 and 7. You can also include things like 7 and 3, and then 21 and 1, but those ones are redundant. Well, we know that we don't need the positive versions, but we don't need like -7 and -3 because they are redundant. So doing x minus 7 times x minus 3 is the same thing as x minus 3 times x minus 7. The only reason why last week we included that is because if you have an A value that's not 1, it's a harder problem, so the order matters. All right, but in your problems for the test, the order doesn't matter. So that's why you don't have to include all different possible permutations or orders of the numbers. All right. So again, once we found the 2 numbers that added up to be our B value, then all we had to do was write them out with their signs into binomials. Final type is if we have a positive or negative B, but a negative C value, right? C is negative, which means we know one of the factors has to be positive and the other has to be negative. That's the only way that we can add 2 numbers together or multiply 2 numbers together to get a negative number. All right, so you can see I listed out my different factors of 63. So we have 1 and -63, -1 and +63. We had 3 and -21, or -3 and +21. Then we had 7 and -9, and -7 and +9. All right, all of those multiplied to be -63, but only one combination added to be my +2, which is what I needed. So those were the 2 numbers that I wrote in my 2 binomials. And you can see I didn't just pull their signs out of thin air. There was the signs that I needed for them to add up to be the b value. All right, so that's where the signs came from on the inside, is the signs right there. All right, so we had a -7. That's how we had x minus 7. All right, and we also had this +9. That's how I got this +9. All right, so for your test tomorrow, so you are going to have things like characteristics of polynomials. You're also going to have identifying based off of their names. You're going to have some factoring like we had, and some addition, subtraction, and multiplication, just like we just went through. All right, so that's everything on your test tomorrow. So there's not going to be any assignment for today. All I want you to do is to prepare your notes, all right, and anything you might need, because while all of this stuff is fine and dandy and this is great information, you actually want to have some resources. So for your test tomorrow, keep in mind it closes at midnight. All right, and you can use your book if you want it, or more likely your notes. All right, but no internet. And keep in mind, I can see when you leave, like based off of how Canvas works, I can see when you leave Canvas and for how long. So if you maybe make a poor decision and you're like, man, I really just like, there's just this one problem that I need help with, I don't know the answer to, and you don't want to take a guess, you don't want to try yourself, you want to try and cheat, I'll know. And it'll also make a lot of sense to me, because there are people like I'm gonna let you know right now, like I've seen people turn in things that like, I'm like, I didn't teach you that method, and I know that nobody at the school teaches that method because it's not the way that is most efficient to do that type of problem. So you're probably trying to get answers online, because I know that, so especially like with the factoring problems, it's really obvious to me when you get the answers online. So rather than cheating and risking a 0, especially during something as massive as a test during a pandemic, if you honestly get that stuck, please, please, please email me. All right. I'm happy to help you out. I'm happy to give you hints or give you practice problems to try out, or send you like videos on like the content. All right. That is going to be so much better than risking getting caught cheating. All right. So on your test, you can use books. You can use your book. You can use your notes. No internet and no people. All right. So I don't want you texting anybody that's in the class or has taken the class. I don't want you to ask your parents for help. No people. All right. Thank you for listening to such a long video. Hopefully it is helpful for you for your test tomorrow. And again, if you get stuck, email me. It'll be okay. I'm going to be super lenient with this, because I have to be. All right, we're doing the best that we can in the situation that we're given. Super proud of all y'all. Keep up the great work. All right, have a good day.